probably funneling in and out. In the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and I don't have a presentation deck, okay? This is not a presentation. I'm not going to hit you with a bunch of slides. This is about walking you through how to use the system. This is the ULD EUCR system. Okay, so if you have any questions, just speak out. I'm just going to start walking through it. If there's something that's interest, we'll talk about it. We can deep dive into it if that makes more sense. Okay, so when you come into the system,
who has not seen it? Has anybody not seen it? Okay.
Okay.
Who has not seen ULD? So you've seen the old system, and you know what it is. Okay, good.
Right.
Well, it just gives us a starting point, guys.
Okay, one of the things I failed to do is to introduce myself. I'm Darren Couch. I'm with UL Digital, and this is Owen Martin. He's also with UL Digital. So any questions that you have related to it, the company or the system, let us know. Okay, when you log into the UL Digital system, you're going to come to this screen. It's the dashboard. Now the dashboard has a lot of different, it gives you access to the menu over here. It also has a few, actually has a few options over here as well. Now, when you come into the dashboard, you can actually see we have widgets. So there's different widgets here. This one's the closed transactions. This is disputed transactions, interline summary mismatch. So this is customizable. You can configure it the way that makes most sense for your operation. So if you come into it, you can see each of the widgets. You can change the widget to be something else. So let's say, for example, closed transactions. Maybe that's not interesting to you. Maybe you want open transactions. You can move those here. Or maybe interline. If you're a carrier and you're interline, maybe that's the most important item for you. You can choose the interline summary. And then maybe disputed transactions. Yeah, they're interest, but you've already got interline here. Maybe you want to move freight forwarders, your freight forwarder summary over here. Then you can do that.
Now, why do we do this? First thing you want to log into any system to find out what is interesting to you as a user. So we looked at this and said, well, this is the first set of dashboards we created. If somebody starts using the system tomorrow and says, hey, I'd like to see X, and it's not readily available to me, I think most people can models, then they're the things that we can quickly knock up. A dashboard is designed to give you a short amount of information, and if you need more, you drill into it to go to a full base screen. That's why we started with a dashboard as an opening standpoint for you, and to have it configurable so you as a user can design it your way.
Right, and so we put the interline summary and the freight forwarder summary at the top. Demurrage is of interest to a lot of companies. So what you could do is you could put your demurrage payable here. You could then also, we have another widget for demurrage receivable. So you could put that there. So this would give you a dashboard. You can see exactly what's going on, any amounts that you potentially owe or is pending to another organization, or the opposite that would be owed to you. At the bottom, again, I mean, this is me just moving things around. Mismatched is, I'll talk about that in just a minute, and then I'm going to move disputes here. So I think from mismatch, one of the things that the old ULD system had in it was a function for what they call dummy returns. So for example, a inbound came in, but there was no outbound. Well, what we've done with this system is we've made it so that automates that. So if another organization sends you one of your ULDs, it will create and there was no outbound to them, it will create the outbound as a mismatch. And once you complete your transfer in, then that actually is what triggers that mismatch. Now, so that would be shown here at the bottom here. So It also can be as part of a chain. So for example, A transfers to B, and then B transfers to C, and then all of a sudden B transfers to A. The system is smart enough to go, oh, I need to trade a mismatch for C to B. And it would do it based on the time at which B transferred to A. Okay, so that's the way that this works. There's a lot of different scenarios in mismatch, but one of the reasons why we highlight it is because the system does the best they can. You may want to supplement some of that information or change it. For example, when a mismatch happens, it's based on the transfer date of the transaction that triggered it, which may not be the date that you want to put in there. So you would go in and say, oh, I want to raise a change request against that. I didn't receive that on the 29th. That actually came to me on the 25th, for example. So you have that capability, and I'll walk you through how to do a dispute as well. But just so you know, a mismatch, that's what it is. It's an automatic transaction created by the system based on scenarios that happen, and so you don't have to create dummy records. And disputed transactions are exactly what I just said. Oh, sorry, not exactly what I just said. They are transfers where you disagree with the transfer or the transaction. And I say transfer or transaction because that's kind of the way that we do it. When you do a transfer, you can have multiple ULDs inside it. And when you raise a dispute, you can raise a dispute at what we call the transfer level or the UCR level, which is, say you want to dispute the date. Well, you would dispute it at the UCR level or the transfer level. But if you just want to dispute a particular ULD, for example, that ULD was damaged, it wasn't serviceable, but you said it was serviceable, I'm going to dispute it and say, no, it was damaged, and you have the opportunity to even add a picture. Okay? So I'm going to go into each of these more individually, but I'm just saying from a dashboard, this is why we're trying to give you that visibility. And if you look down here on disputed, if you put your cursor over this, you can see this is yellow with a red, this is yellow with a green, and this is green. Now, yellow with a red means that it's pending the dispute and it's pending on me. So action is on me to take. If I move to this next one, you can see it says pending dispute on other party. So I've raised a dispute and the other party needs to take action. So there's nothing for me to do but to wait for them to respond. Now I do have ways to talk to them as well, and I can do that through the system, but that's what that icon means. And then the final one is dispute accepted. So either you disputed one of my transactions and I accepted it, or you accepted I disputed a transaction and you accepted it. So once it's green, you know that dispute has been accepted, both parties agreed. All right? So that is the high level of the dashboard. The dashboard gives you that overall view of things that are going on in the system, and you have the capability to organize that data or that information that best suits your needs. Now, one thing I will point out at the top, you can see something called new messages. So when things happen, like a mismatch is automatically created or a dispute is raised, you'll also receive a message here. And these are all links, by the way. So if I click on one of these links, it takes me directly into the system to that point. So if it was a mismatch, it would take me to that mismatch transaction. And at that point, I would have the ability to review it, to dispute it, to create a UCR and print it out and mail it to somebody, or to even decide if I want to do a chat directly to that other party. You also have, if there's an issue that you're having with the system, you can also come here and you can send a new system request. This could be needing to provide a particular access or a particular question where we might be able to help you, or you need some help with anything with the system. Some screen doesn't work the way you expected it to, or there is a bug you found, or there was some functionality that you would request and say, gee, if it would just do this, my life would be so much better, right? We want to know that as well. Below it, you'll see release notes. So about every month, we look to put a new release. That new release usually has some new features and functions that we've added into the system. It also has some things that we found in the system that weren't working, may not be working quite right, so bug fixes. So in that, if you wanted to see what was the new things that happened, you could select that. Okay, now the last one is just to view our website, but that's quite easy. Here is going to be your name, and if you select on it, you have the ability to change your password. Now, a lot of times when we give people access to the system, we will give them, well, I'm going to say a lot of times, when we give you access to the system, we'll give you a password, and the first thing we'd like you to do is to come in here and change your password.
Well, actually, we mandate that. So the system, the password we first mail you, it'll only be one-time use. After that, you set your own password. There are reset functions. There are ways of, if you've forgotten your password, there is a forgotten password standard function that you'll find in any service. It'll send you an email. When you set yourself up, can we go to organisation? One thing we've seen, people start using funny emails to try and create, and we don't email often, but we have to use an email, a legitimate email, to reset your passwords. So use your corporate email addresses, please. Don't create a Gmail address. You'll see stuff in here that, because this is our demo system, and Scott Couch, he's a mythical person for this person over here. Mm-hmm. And he's probably got 5 different mythical email addresses, but please use your own IDs. I'll step quickly through organisation and what the thought around this is. When I looked at airline and I looked at this whole thing, airlines were the centre of the universe from this point of view. They have a relationship with an MRO in different locations. They have their own they're an airline that has their own locations. From there, they might have a manager, they might have GSAs, they'll have freight forwarders relationships in all of these locations, and they're all spread out. So they've got this very big web of relationships. What we're trying to do is capture that. And why we're doing that is to make sure that if we set up a transaction that goes from airline X to freight forwarder Y, that an established relationship already exists. We don't want to be allowing people to send a transaction on your airline behalf to somebody that airline doesn't have a relationship with. Your GSAs, your cargo handlers are people who are doing these transactions on behalf of the airline. But they don't own the relationship. They're told to send it to freight forwarder X in location Y. Well, we need to make sure that those are there. So one of the things we've gone through here is said, well, okay, here's the core information around the organisation. Here's all of the locations that I exist in. And Darren, if you can bring me up a sub-org for... Have you got Auckland in there? Did you create the freight forwarders and handlers in Auckland?
No, I don't think not for this user. No.
Oh, okay. Do you know who you've got one for?
Oh yeah, sure. There's this one. This one has. If you click on the view, Owen, you can actually quickly see, and then we can drill into it if we want. Yeah. You want to go into it?
Yeah, just go into it quickly. So what we've got on the right-hand side there is where I've got the YY codes. They are freight forwarders, and where I've got the top one, he's a cargo handler in the location of Hong Kong for Test Air 1. Does that make sense to people?
Is it removing that and ask you?
Unfortunately not. I would invite you to come forward 25 feet. Unfortunately, we played with a lot of this. Unfortunately, we can't get it actually any larger without that.
But you can point out too that here you can see this CH means cargo handler, and this means freight forwarder. So you can view it you can come into it this way. You can also, you don't have to come into it. You can also click on the view and you can see freight forwarder listing here, and you can see cargo handler. The way it is right now is every airline to a cargo handler is a one-to-one relationship, but obviously you can have multiple freight forwarders in a location, so that can be a one-to-many.
So one of the things, and we're talking at the moment, this was the first cut. When we start looking at full production of this view will change a bit, because what's going to happen is you're going to see this location suddenly having 85 to 160 freight forwarders, and you're going to need to be able to sort through them a little bit easier and things like that. But why have we done this is because we've also got the mobile app, and we'll hopefully show you a bit more about that later. And the reason we did it was we looked at it from the point of view of the mobile app would going to be used by a terminal handler, might be used by a freight forwarder, but it'll be used by other people who don't have their own systems. What we want to be able to do is restrict the data that those people have access to make sure that the transactions that they create are valid, and that they can't send it to a freight forwarder that's not authorised. They can't send it to an MRO who's not authorised for that location. So what we're doing is tying the relationships from the airline's point of view back through this.
Okay, so I know we've started to come down to this to the suborgs, but I want to come back to the organization. One of the things I want to point out: everything that's in gray is not editable. It's actually entered by the site admin or us as the administrators. This is information that shouldn't change: your IATA number, your airline code, and you can also see the name of the organization, as well as what we have something called webhook URL. That's for API. So if we're going to set up an API for you, then we would populate that. But anything that is in white, you will see is editable. So if you have a manager like a Uniload or an ACL or Jetainer, and you're an airline, you would come here and you would select them as the organization that represents you. Now, this is important because when you are basically giving that manager access to your information, and they can act on your behalf. So so if you look at the top here, you see this drop down here. A manager will have something similar. So every organization that has selected them as a manager will appear here. So they can quickly, with one login ID, they can quickly go between all of the organization, all of the airlines that have selected them as the manager. So it makes it very easy for them to process transactions on your behalf, to add ULDs to the inventory, to access reports, so they can see everything. They can help you manage your organization, because that's the authority you've given them. So it's quite a useful tool for being able to give that authority. But as the airline, you have to give them that authority, and then they can act on your behalf. The rest of the fields on here are really optional. The main reason we put those in there is because when we create a UCR, this information is put onto the UCR. But as Owen mentioned, if you can give us proper email, that's very useful. And I will point out to this luck email, if you put a luck email address in here, anytime there's a transfer, a luck message will go to that email address.
So if you've still got legacy systems that demand that you pump those old luck messages in, we can cater for it. We don't have to use a webhook for you. You can still use your legacy environments. We're not here to try and tell your IT departments they need to change, but we can stay with status quo for the time being. But as we move forward, and we're looking for you to send the ULD, the UCR information to us, then we'll start using webhooks, we will start using APIs and enabling you to use a full digital transfer service rather than a clunky mail type service.
So also, as we started to talk about the suborg, so suborg is every location or airport that you fly into. And you can set these up, but the system will also automatically set some up for you. For example, if somebody said, if another organization did a transfer to your organization in a location that you do not have, you have not set up, it will automatically create that for you. It'll give that location to you. It won't do anything else. It'll just create that so that it knows that in that location you have an operation. Now you can still dispute that, and you can also do more things with that sub-organization. Now, when I went over here and I pressed on the handlers and forwarders, you can see that we have one, as I mentioned before, a one-to-one relationship for the cargo handlers, but for the freight forwarders, you can have many. And you can see, for example, there's a FedEx Hong Kong. So if I wanted to have a relationship with them, I can do it here. And if you're using the LUC messages, or you want to use the, I guess, the legacy way of assigning YY codes to your freight forwarders, you can do that here. So you would then say maybe, let's see, this is Hong Kong's HKG FDX, for example, and you can save that. So not only did we create another suborg, but we also gave it the ability, we created another freight forwarder underneath this suborganization, but we also gave it a YY code. If you don't need the YY code, that's okay, but it is there because many organizations do still use that. Okay, so that's the suborganization. That's the organization and the suborganization. And the next thing is, well, next part I'd like to go through is the ULD. So if we select on ULD, oops, sorry, that's users. I'll select on ULD. Now, what we've asked is when new organizations come in, one of the things we would like them to do, besides making sure all their organization information is correct, is we'd also like them to tell us, give us their fleet of ULDs. Now, it's not mandatory, but it's ideal. We can then pre-populate the inventory. It can be as a range, or it can be as just a list, and we can still import them. But if we can import them, then it helps the system in terms of you can have information available for your ULDs, and anytime. So, for example, if a transfer is done to you and it uses the airline code that matches your airline, and it's not in the system, it will automatically create that ULD for you and assign it to you as the owner. So still, it's more ideal that you actually give us the information. We'll help you pre-populate it, but if not, the system will not stop. Our directive is do not stop any transfers, right? Let everything go through, but we will certainly highlight and raise items as necessary.
I'm going to say to that end, why have I got gaps on my screen, Bob? Because if we have a look at the ULD suffix on all of these rows that have got gaps, they all have DS. Well, DS is a different manager. And if I have a look at the rest of it, it's between Test Air 1 and Test Air 2 and Manager 1. And unfortunately, I couldn't automatically understand who was the owner. That's okay. I can go back and work that out later. But I'm not going to stop you from allowing the transfer to go through. That's a really important thing to. But if I can look at the suffix and correlate it back to either my airline, my manager, or the airline that I'm sending it to, or possibly their manager, and work out the relationship, I can then assign who the ownership really is. So we've built some smarts into it but when it can't match anywhere, it actually does send a whole bunch of messages out saying, hey, you've created a transfer and we don't know who the owner is for this new pallet or this new container, so please check it out. But that's why we've got some blanks in there today. It was really because Bob actually was helping us over the weekend, created some transfers and used that DS thing. But realistically, it's been good because we can show you that we're not stopping you from creating those transfers. Aaron?
Oh, yep, okay. So let's take the next step. Let's talk about users, because I think once you are starting to use the system, you're going to want to create users. Now, we will create the first user for you, which is what we refer to as the organization admin. Okay, so the organization admin has the authority over everything that's in the system. But they can also create what we refer to as sub-org admins and mobile app users. So what's the difference? So on the screen here, you can actually see that this one says org admin, which is me, and then underneath it, it says Ronald is a sub-org admin in Hong Kong, and then it shows Fred is a mobile app user in Hong Kong. Now, why did we do this? We did it because what we recognized is that if I'm an org admin and I am in, say, Europe, and I have operations in other areas such as Asia, Middle East, or the US, may not be very convenient for me to create the mobile app user when you need to add a new user at that location. So what we did is we came up with the concept of sub-org admin, and then you can assign, the sub-org admin must be assigned to a location. And when they're assigned to a location, they then have the ability to create mobile app users, and they have the visual, they have the ability to view actions transfers in their location. But an org admin can see everything that's happening in all locations. Sub-orgs have the ability to look at their locations, as well as, like I said, manage users for those locations.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
Okay. So I think one of the most important, so what this whole system is about is doing transfers, creating transfers. So if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see two things. One has a plus and says create transfer. Another has transfer. So the difference is that if I press on this transfer, it will show me my history. But if I wanted to add a transfer, I can press this green button here. But because the whole purpose of this application is really to help do transfers, we added this plus transfer button. So if you click on this create transfer, it's the same as coming into the transfer and pressing the add transfer button. So that's really the difference. Again, if you come into the transfer screen, then here you can see all the transfers that you've performed. You also can see, so these are the UCR numbers, and if it has a dispute, as I mentioned before, you can actually see those, and if you put your cursor over it again, you can see what disputes are pending on you or the other party. You can see who was involved in the transfer as the opposing party. You can see if it was an inbound or an outbound, the location, the local time, whether it was interline or not, whether this transfer was done as a mismatch, and then also the UTC time. At the right-hand side, you have the ability to void it. So we've had some customers, they accidentally did a transfer, they didn't mean to do that. So instead of asking the other party to, or raising a change request and asking the other party to accept it, we give you the ability to void. Now, voiding a transfer can only be done within 30 days, and we're also going to we also put some restrictions on it. Sorry. For example, if somebody is already starting to use if that ULD has been transferred to another party, then we don't want you voiding a transfer that is part of another transaction. Okay, so one of the things that you can also notice at the top, if you wanted to output things in terms of a CSV, Excel, or PDF, you can still select those buttons. It'll create those files, put them on your PC, and you can send them out to whoever needs that information. So at this time, I'm going to do a transfer. I'm going to add a transfer here. And I'm going to say the transfer, the location. So when I press add transfer, it knows who I am. I'm test air 1, so it already assumes that. We default to outbound, but if you wanted to have an inbound, you can. We know most of the time it's going to be an outbound because you're trying to remove your responsibility. You're trying to pass it to the other party. So we assume that's the default. So I'm going to select Bangkok, and you can also choose the day. We understand that it may not be done in real time. So let's say this was done on Saturday. The organization, so what's the opposing organization? What this list will show you is every airline that has an operation in the location that you selected. It will also show you every freight forwarder that has an operation in the location that you selected. So if you see in my list here, I actually have one called, so here's freight forwarder 1. So this is not stopping me from doing a transfer. With the old IULD-UG system, everything was airline to airline. It was all interline. This, we now have the ability to do airline out to the freight forwarders. So in this one, I'm just going to do a transfer from test air 1 to test air 2. I can add some remarks if I like. I'm going to do a transfer of PMC, and the number is, what number do I want to do? Sorry, just a second. I'm pulling up a number that is in the system. Yeah,
Is it on the other tab?
20057. And I'm going to put ZC. Okay. Once you select that, you have the ability to choose whether it's damaged, serviceable, or unserviceable. If we choose damage, it's a good idea you can add a remark to it. You can also add in the ULD support equipment. So if there was a fire cover, a net, say 2 straps, and let's say 4 fittings, we can select that. So we're following the UCR, which has the ability for customers or for your staff to be able to enter those information, those quantities. Right now, we don't see a lot of people using that or tracking them, but we built it into this system so it can be used, and it will keep track of that. So I will know how many net straps fittings I passed to a particular another airline, as well as how many they passed to me. I will know what's the balance that is owed between those two. We can provide that information. If something is damaged, you also have the ability to add a picture. So let's say you took a picture. You can select that. You can also add multiple pictures as well. It doesn't have to be just one. And if I select 3 pictures and I press the button, you'll actually see it says 3. So those pictures will be added to the transfer. If I wanted to add more ULDs, then I can do it here. So I'm just going to add one more. I'm going to do PMC 20059 ZC. And this time, I'm just going to leave it serviceable. I'm going to say there's 1 net, and that's it. And I'm going to do a transfer. Okay. That wasn't expected. I'm sorry?
It had an error message at the top.
Yep, it did. Yep, so let me just... If you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly do that again. So let's see.
So folks, what he's doing here is creating a transfer in the back end. So if you're from one of the managers or you're one of those organisations that are still using a large paper-based system and you've got a back-end office, people are plugging in that stuff into the old IULD-UG system, they'd be now starting to plug it in here and do it this way. What we've done with the mobile app that we created, it does exactly the same thing, except I've got the ability to take a photograph. You let the OCR reader pick up the tag numbers, confirm them, I can add in the number of straps and fittings and extra equipment that's available to it, and it does exactly the same thing. It allows me to take probably more photographs as evidence of the serviceability of what I have sent to the other party. And it's really as a reference, because one of the things we have seen here is around people disputing, oh, it got damaged in transit. It got that, you sent me a damaged pallet, now you want me to pay for it. Well, if you change your processes and encourage your handlers to change their processes to include more photographic evidence, we can store it. We're not going to store it forever. We can store it for a reasonable period of time to create a history for that ULD. And in that way, over time, we can see the wear and tear, we can see what's happening with each of the units, and it just makes sense to provide that visual proof. We started part of this journey along the lines of the terminal handler, or the cargo handler, puts it onto a truck, and of course, what was the next thing? The trucker signed for it. Really? And the trucker is the freight forwarder? No, he's not. He's an independent contractor from the freight forwarder. But one of the things we're trying to do here is expand this so the freight forwarder can then eventually sign on their behalf that when it got there, this is what he got, and make him actually accountable. Because the trucker really should never have had the ability to sign on behalf of the freight forwarder. As an airline, your relationship's with the freight forwarder, not with his trucker. So we're trying to close that loop up a little bit better by providing the freight forwarders tools so that they can see what they've been given. They can see the pictures, bring them up. And if we all start thinking about it, and I'm not advocating you use the app that we built, but if you go and invest time and effort with your IT department to come through with this, and you start looking beyond what you thought was UCR, and I'll refer to it, and I've called it UCR Plus, which is the extra equipment. Now, I've been talking to which is the nets, the straps, the fittings. Most people only ever put the ULD number and say, that's my UCR. The pallet, it's $1,000. I've just been talking to some of the OEMs downstairs. By the time you add 8 straps, a net, and the fittings, it's effectively another $200 on top. So it's $1,200. And then people start telling me about, oh, well, I received the pallet, but I've got the net from a different company attached to it. Now I've got to separate it and return it properly and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of things in here bad practices that we can start eliminating and start cleaning up over time. The reason we want to do this is around that sustainability. It's around reuse. It's making sure the inventory and the assets that you purchase or that you lease to your airlines and the companies is used properly. I'm not trying to, and even the OEMs say, I don't really want to be creating another emergency order for 1,000 straps because somebody keeps throwing them out on me. They prefer the airlines and everybody in the industry to be using it in a sustainable way. You managed to get that thing up and running?
Yeah, no, so I was just having trouble with the Anita. So look, I've just done a few transfers. There's been no issue. And actually what happened was I ended up also just doing a few transfers for ULDs that I didn't have in the system. And so what you can see is anytime I did that, it created a message to just let me know that there was a new ULD. And because I used ZC, which happens to be the organization for Test Air 1 here, it went ahead and created that, and it assigned me as the airline associated with that automatically. So this is just letting me know that. So let's do another transfer. this time. Okay, we're going to do it in Bangkok. We're going to choose the 22nd. We're going to say it was to test air 2, and I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to say 20080 and ZC, and I am going to say there was one cover and one net, and I'm going to do the transfer. Okay, so that transfer went through. That transfer was done on the 22nd. It's right here. Now, one of the things you'll notice on the transfer screen is some of the control numbers are in blue and some are in green. The difference is that if it's in blue, it means there was a transfer done and it's still the reciprocal transfer has not been received. So if it was an outbound, then the inbound has not been received yet. And if it was from another party and we received it and we haven't returned it, then it's going to be blue. If it's green, it means that the reciprocal transaction was received. And the one that I just did was right here on the 22nd to test air 2. So if I want to, I can select it. I can also, at this point, I can view the luck message. So if you remember an organization, I had luck email. So because I put the luck email in, this message was sent to the email associated with that. But if I want to just see what that message looks like, then you can just select that. If you want to view the UCR, now this is the IATA standard. Now that's just our little logo. It would be the logo of the airline that is actually using the app, or sorry, using this the system. Now, on the left-hand side, you can see again from the organization, it put the address and it also put the CETA and the email if it was entered into the organization information, and the same with the opposing organization. This is all the information again in the UCR format, and if we want to, we can download it or we can print it. So if you need to just send it to some other party, you can certainly do that. And finally, if you remember, I actually did, this one I didn't take a picture on this one. But if you took any pictures, or if the mobile app was used to take pictures, or you uploaded pictures when you did the transfer, then you will be able to see these as well in the under images.
Now, one of the things here around show signatures, primarily we've looked at that from the app's point of view. So a mobile app user from a cargo handler, he sets up his app, he gets to his signature screen, he scrolls in his signature once, and that is what then goes on to the UCR. When he gets the opposing party to sign for it, their signature will come up on that as well. So by the time he and the trucker have sent that load on the back of the truck and out the door, all of this would be pre-populated in exactly the same way that you would have seen on a piece of paper. We have followed the exact format, the IATA format, to the letter. So it looks like that. Now, the only thing we do different, I'm not bound by the end of a piece of paper. In the past, what were you, 8, was it, Bob, or was it 6 pallets, or 6 ULDs could go on a form? Something like that?
No, I think 10, but...
Yeah, I think it was, well, if I look at the Emirates one that they handed us, it was only 6 or something ridiculous. Because we're digital, we don't have a limit. So if you're transferring 22 pallets and 5 containers to the same party, our transactions will handle it. No problem. Our transfers will handle it. So there's no limits that we were given as part of the old legacy environments. We start stripping that away.
Yeah, I just did unfortunately I'm having issues with AnyDesk, but I just did a transfer using the mobile app, and I think it's a little bit better to see if you want to see the signatures. So what Owen was talking about, so the mobile app, when you log in, it asks you to put your signature in, and then when you do a transfer, you give the phone to the other party, they can sign, they can put their name, obviously they put their name in, you'd select what organization they're in. So in this example, I'm Test Air 1, Fred Flintstone here, and I transferred to Test Air 2 to Sam Davis, and so their signatures, we can see their signatures, and I did say it was damaged, and because I said it was damaged, I took a picture, and I took this picture to get the UCR number, so I can use the camera to get the ULD, I should say ULD ID, and then I said it was damaged, so I took a picture of that damage. So I did that all with the phone, hit the button, transfer, it's now in the back-end system where it can be actioned in terms of you can print out the UCR or mail it or take further action.
Useful? Not useful? Anybody see a use for their company to make sure you can track damaged stuff?
So just moving on, one of the things that we did with this system as well is we realized that, I gotta stop doing that. One of the things we realized is that communications between parties, a lot of times it's through email, maybe pick up the phone. We also give you a chat capability within the system. So for example, actually, you know what I should do? What I'll do is I'll dispute the transfer. So Test Air 2, you can see right now this I just sent this to Test Air 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm Test Air 1 now. I was pretending to be Test Air 1 who sent a transfer to Test Air 2. This time I'm looking from Test Air 2 side, and I come into this transfer. So now what I can do is I can say, I have two options to dispute. One, I can dispute it at the UCR level or the transfer level, which means I'm going to dispute maybe the transfer date or the transfer time or the party or the location. I can dispute all of this information here. Now, if I do a transfer dispute, and let's say I had 5 ULDs underneath here, in the system, it technically creates 5 disputes because it's based on a transaction level, but we just make it easy for you to just dispute one time, but from a system side, you've actually created 5 disputes. And the other party will receive it, and they will be able to accept that as a UCR dispute, means I agree all 5 of those were transferred on a different date, or it was a different time, or a different location.
Or I didn't get them.
Right. Or you can dispute it at the ULD level, which is, you can see you've got fire covers, nets, straps, fittings, and doors. Let's say you disagree with some of those numbers, so you can create the dispute here. So let's do this one first. We'll create a dispute, and we'll disagree.
Normally, I'd like you to put something more of a description in the top, because the first thing it'll default to is the UCR number. But if you go UCR number and tell me what the dispute's about, it's going to help the other party really look at it.
Right. So from this dispute, and it's not a very good example, I should probably have done the transfer a little bit earlier. But I'm going to say, I want to dispute it and say it was done on the 26th. And if I press request, then this becomes a dispute. Now you can see this dispute has been raised, it's been created at this date, and it says that the create date needs to be from the 29th until the 26th. So if I come in if I go back to Test Air 1, I come into my transfers, then you'll see I have a dispute. It's against me, pending dispute on me. So I click it, and what I can do is I can see that this is so I can view the UCR dispute, and here I have the option to accept or reject it. So if I agree with what they're saying, then I can accept it. If I disagree, then it will reject it, and it will go back to the other party to say it's been rejected. And at the same time, we highly recommend if you're going to reject it or you want to communicate, you use this chat on the right-hand side. Hi, agree to change the date. You can send you can put it here, so you don't have to go outside the system to tell them you dispute something or why you're agreeing with their dispute. You can also add pictures. So if you wanted to, you could send a picture of a signed UCR that shows the date is the different date. So we give you that flexibility that both parties can use to.
Some of the logic around this is about you as an individual, you work for your company. This is normally at an organisational level role, and there may be 3 of you who look after that organisation. It means that when you might have had a chat with the other party, and then 2 days later you go on day's leave and somebody else has to look at it and they can see the history. So it's the communication here is from party to party, being organisation to organisation, not individual to individual, which email tends to be. So we decided against using email because we don't need Fred sending it to Sam, and then Sam disputing it, and it go back to Fred. But Fred's not there for another week. Who's looking after it? Oh, Wilma is, but Wilma can't see the communication flow. So we've kept it in the app, really because it made sense to do so rather than taking it out.
Okay, and you can see that I actually, once both the other party accepted it, then it turned to green, so now it's no longer disputed, dispute was accepted. Okay, so that's how you can dispute, and like I said, you can, if you see here, I have another one, it's a dispute is pending on me. Again, if I select it, I believe this one is yes. So this one is a dispute at the ULD level, or sorry, at the transaction level. So again, at the ULD level. So what happened was they said that Testair 2 said, no, you didn't send me 2, you only sent me 1 net, and you didn't send me any straps, you said you sent me 2. So as Testair 1, I can accept or reject these. If I was logged in as Testair 2, then it would just show cancel. So if I made a mistake and I raised it and I wanted to just cancel it, I can still cancel it. So maybe I'll just quickly show you.
All the more reason to have photographic evidence of what you sent people.
You see, if I come back in as if I've raised the request to do if I've raised the dispute and I change my mind, or maybe I had a conversation with the other party, I don't have to wait for them to take action. I can just come in here and cancel it. But if I am that party, then I have the options to accept or reject. So let's say I accept it. If you accept it, then it'll show accepted, and it'll show when you've accepted that. Okay? So, and from here, now that one was an action on me, and now it's green. So I could go back to my dashboard. I could look at my disputed, and now the only one that is pending, any action is pending on another party. So there's nothing for me to do. So I can quickly use my dashboard to filter and see things that require my action. If they do, then I can take that action.
Now, if anybody just noticed, Darren's got the drop-down function sitting at the top at the moment because he's enabling himself to act on behalf of multiple organisations. That's exactly the role of a manager. If you notice that he swapped airlines and it took him back to exactly the same screen, but from the point of view of that second airline, and he could swap back. So all of that happens anytime you're on a screen and you're a manager. So if you're a manager looking at different reports, you're looking at different aspects of the services, and you want to see it from different points of view of different airlines, just switching the airline brings it straight back to you in exactly the same viewpoint. Just something that was a little, something that we noticed when we did it was just that little quirk just made things a lot easier to go, oh, hang on, I want to have a look at the demurrage report for Airline 1, Airline 2, Airline 3, or I want to look at the outstanding who owes what to me, and I can do that on behalf of each of my airlines.
Right. I mean, there's some other things that we built into the system to make things a little bit easier for people. If you want a little bit more space on the screen, you can press this hamburger button. It'll expand the screen more, so it'll hide the menu. When you want it back, you just press it again. And another thing, it has the normal controls. You can use your control key, and you can make it smaller. You can make it larger as you need. So it does have some basic features or Windows features in it.
Actually, whilst you've got it fairly large there, Darren.
Huh?
Whilst you've got it fairly large, the interline summaries. Well, it's a good time to talk about that. We've now sent some stuff from one airline to another, and they owe me and I owe them. If you have a look on the summaries up here, so I'm now Test Air 1, Test Air 2. They owe me 10 ULDs. And the other side of it is, he owes me 1. They owe us, I owe them. And
Yep.
if we can expand on them quickly from the dashboards to see what they are and then start drilling into them.
Yeah,
We separated out the counts so that when you start sending things from one airline to another, or from you as the airline to a freight forwarder, the inventory counts are there. So we can see what the cumulative count is, so that throughout regular intervals, you can work together between the two airlines or between the airline and the freight forwarder to work out how much do you owe as far as assets are concerned. I'm not going to talk about anything else apart from that, but the cumulative counts are there. If I interline from Airline 1 to Airline 2, and then Airline 2 has to send it to a freight forwarder, there's 2 different counts that go ahead there. One is from the first airline to the second, and then from the second airline to the freight forwarder. They're 2 different inventory counts, because the liability on making sure it's returned is in different positions. And we treated those 2 different types of transactions slightly differently. But that we looked at that and said, well, okay, what do you owe me, and what do they owe? What do I owe you, and what do you owe me?
right, and like Owen's mentioned, you can look at this stuff from the dashboard. If you hover your cursor over it, it'll tell you that the first number is 10, means owed to us, and if you click on it, it'll expand it. And the same with the 1. If you click on that, it'll just expand the 1. Now, we expect that this could get quite busy. So what you can do is, that's the dashboard view. All of these have links on the the top left-hand corner, so you can use that, what Owen mentioned, to drill into it. So if you select on that, you'll get a bigger screen, and you'll be able to look at this information the same way. So that is how you can have a quick view of your interline, and you can do the same thing for the freight forwarders. So in this case, if we wanted to, again, we could select on this, and this gives us a view of total days. And what we've done is, for anything that's under 1 to 5 days, it'll be in green, so you can see down here, which means they don't owe you anything, or it's within a tolerable amount of days. And then we say 6 to 10 is going to be in amber, and then anything above 10 is going to be in red. So it gives you a quick view to see anything that may be of a concern that you might want to take action on. If you want to drill into it, then again, select the screen, then you can come into the detail and see it this way. Now we have other links to be able to go into this. If you wanted to drill into the ULD, if you wanted more information on that particular ULD, you could drill into that. If you wanted to see the UCR associated with it, you can select on Okay. Another thing, I guess, from a transfers, one of the things too is that we were talking about how we might want to communicate. So we do have links here to the opposing party. So if I select on it, it brings me here, which is an overview of that organization. Could even have their contacts. If they add their contacts into the system, they would appear here. And then here I can write to them. I can write to them and they can write back to me. So anytime I send a message to them, it will show up as a prompting here, a new message prompt. And if you select on it, it'll bring you to the location where that message is. So we try to make it so that everything brings you to the logical place where you might want to go based on a new message that was received or an action that you probably need to take. Moving on to reports. So transaction reports gives you a list of all the transactions associated from your organization. You can, if you remember in the IULDUG system, you had the ability to have a menu, and in the menu you would select things like real time or weekly or monthly. All that functionality is built into here. So you have the ability to select date ranges or months and directions and owners and if there's any disputes against it. So for example, if you wanted to raise something that has a dispute, you could just select on that and you could quickly see any ULDs that have any disputes against them or any transactions, I should say, that have disputes against them.
Now, remember, a transfer has one or more ULDs. Each ULD in that transfer becomes a unique transaction. Why? I sent 5 ULDs out to airline 2. What's the return transfer? Oh, there's 5 come back. But 3 of them were from that transfer, and 2 of them were from another transfer, and I've still got 2 missing. So, what's the likelihood of an outbound transfer and an inbound transfer being the same? Over time, probably 0. So, it's the transaction that counts. The transfers matter because that's what was sent now in that group. 1 or more. But at the end of the day, we need to split them down to unique lines, and it's about the ULD as a transaction. And when we do that, we can then understand what's missing, what's still out there, and exactly what was there. It gets a little complicated when we start talking about pallet stacks, and we'll sort of leave that one out, and I think that'll need to be a full video at some point in time because of the way pallet stacks are handled. But just understand that when we start looking at transaction, it's about that unique ULD that got sent, and we're looking for the return transfer of it. We talked about mismatch earlier. Early on, when we started with production, we started seeing a lot of returns coming back from airline 2 to airline 1 because we never had the outbound. So we mismatched the outbound to enable the pairing to occur. That then starts aligning things up. It allowed people to go back into the service and say, oh no, we sent that a month ago, and because it's interline, the D word starts occurring, and we can start calculating and showing what that looks like. Okay? When it's freight forwarder, we'll show you the number of days that it's been out there.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So if you're an airline and you're transferring, I don't know, 10 of these, 5 of those types for their inventory that you're intending them to have to operate with at any time. This kind of system works out of, on a FIFO basis. But as an airline, in that case, I don't really care which one you bring back, as long as you don't go over your limitation. Can you somehow account for that?
I'm not sure I quite follow that. Sorry, Urs, I'm not quite clear.
This works on the ULD ID, right?
Right.
That's the unique ID.
Uh-huh.
And you count calculation of demurrage based on that one asset. So if that one doesn't come back in
Correct.
time,
Correct.
you'll demurrage.
Correct.
Okay? Now, the way I handle it at a big station, I had the forwarder mutually set an agreement that we always supply you with so many of each type. Okay? And I was not concerned about what was first in, first out. So, which then, you understand the difference, what I mean. I was happy if he didn't go over the 10, that he stayed at his number. I understand the principle. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Ernest, I'll be honest, that's the first time I've heard about it. I understand. I understand where you're coming from. So you're pre-supplying a freight forwarder with equipment for them to load up to be able to send back. No problem. At this point in time, all we've said is, this is what I've sent you, and this is how many days you've had it for. Normally, if I'm going to send you five pallets of X type, mainly because I'm flying 777s predominantly out of the airfield that we're looking at, or whoever the airline is I'm working with, you're going to send them a specific type that's readily usable. There's no, at this point in time, there's no financial calculation for freight forwarder. Okay? There is none. There is just the number of days you've had it.
Yeah,
theoretically, you've had it. Okay? It would enable the freight forwarder to have a view of what stock they have on hand and how long they've had some of it. And I don't see a problem with that. If there's a maximum amount of stock that they should have, or a minimum amount of stock that they should have, and I could quite easily set that up as a set of parameters, but it's a set of parameters that the airline would have to set up themselves. That at the station freight forwarder level, across the board. I could, if it's a use case that's totally across the board, I can set it up for all airlines as a default, and then allow the airlines to tailor it. One of the things we did look at, and the ULD Care manual talked about it, and Bob and I were talking about it a while ago, was having the flexibility that an airline may set up different.
Set up an inventory for that particular customer.
Well, it actually said it may establish different rules for transactions between the freight forwarder, between different parties, and I've already set up some of that as a default. But if that's a use case, then possibly, if you can work with Bob to document that use case and get it back, and we can then look at how to validate that and set that up.
I don't want to complicate things.
No.
Because otherwise, my customer that we agreed on an inventory would have to make sure that the first one in is the first one out.
Yeah.
They would have to select.
Well, the laugh about some of this is sort of the conversation that was had yesterday or the day before with the terminal the cargo handler, saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be wonderful if all of these pallets, especially, were tagged, that I could go and use my technology reader and point it at a stack, and it came out with a list of 200 ULD IDs, and we could immediately understand what the inventory was there. And any airline at that point in time, the airline station manager can organise the transfer you're exactly looking for. We could pre-build it, alert the station manager that this pending transfer is required to fulfil to that freight forwarder, and get them to click go. That's not a hard set of rules to put in play. But we are constantly looking for use cases to improve how you would service, from an airline perspective, your freight forwarders, your terminal, your cargo handlers, and your relationships. We're constantly looking at those sorts of things. Bob.
Have you run through the merge?
No, I can do that now.
You should.
Okay, well, let's do that. So, just quickly, if you're just in love with the IULDUG, the way it worked before, we built that screen in here as well. So if you wanted to select it using these, you can. But all you're doing is just pre-filtering these down here. So you have the capability to do it on your own here, but if you just love the way it was done and you don't have to think about it, you could follow that. So we've talked about transaction reports. Interline equipment summary is one we briefly showed you. If we select on it, we can then see the interline and all the equipment that's still outstanding there. If we click on forwarder equipment summary, again, we did a quick preview of that. It has the days in here. So the last bit, demurrage, we select on demurrage, then what we can see is it defaults right now to receivable. So this is money that other airlines are going to owe us. So demurrage is only related to interline. And what we can see is we've got test air 2 here. We can expand it, and you can see there's a number of transactions in here that are either chargeable now or pending. And how do we tell? So what we can see is, you can see charged here is 212.80, and it's actually only associated with this particular one. And pending is 350.40. So it's pretty easy to tell. If it has a return date, it's been returned, we can calculate demurrage and say that's chargeable. If it went out and has not been returned yet, then the demurrage clock is still ticking, and that's why it's still in pending demurrage. So each day, this number here, any that's for pending, is going to increment by the non-return value divided by 180. So if you need to, you can, if you want to, you can print this out by PDF or CSV, and you could also look at it from a payable standpoint and expand it here to see what you owe the other party. Now, I did briefly talk about in the dashboard that I said you can set up your demurrage payable and your demurrage receivable if this was important to you, and you can see this information. Here and click on it to bring you to the same place that I just brought you.
So the number of free days with the airline can set?
It's set to 5.
Interline is set at 5.
Yeah.
To
So
the
it's like fixed, so there's no customization.
It should be flexible.
So-
Because we can have, especially with freight forwarders.
no, okay. So
No, that's a different. Freight
Urs,
forward is different.
Urs, stick.
Does it have to be
Okay, so Urs, please stick to. No, hang on, Urs. You're right. Let's stick to this. There's 2 distinctive transactions. This conversation's about interline. It's defaulted and set to 5 days. Freight forwarder, other parties. I have the capability for the airline to set up the number of free days per freight forwarder at a location. Okay? And that could be set at a freight forwarder organisation level, or it's set at the freight forwarder station level. So you might say, if your freight forwarder was FF1, but FF1 lives in 4 locations, 3 of them might default to what the organisation level is. The last one might be set to, which might be 5 days. The last one might be set to 8 days because he's a serial pest, or you've given him special dispensation or something. The capability of tailoring and setting these things is available. It's a big overhead. Where we looked at a certain large organisation and the list of freight forwarders that they gave us for 6 stations, was it?
Yep.
And there was something like 6,000 freight forwarders in that list. It was enormous. So if you start building individual level things like that, I would prefer that you thought about it at an org-to-org level, not a sub-org to sub-org level, because by the time you start looking at what the airline industry, the number of stations and the number of freight forwarders per station, you're inviting yourself to have a very, very large headache. And the problem there is, if you expand that a little bit, please, Darren. Just grab one of those and blow it out for me. I've got outstanding days, total days. Am I going to have to put in number of free days and suddenly see that those are there? Because I can tell you, the first bean counter who starts looking at that is going to say, why have I had it for 23 days and I'm charged for 19? Why have I had it for 23 days and I'm charged for 18? Because I've got number of free days flexing around. Capability is there. Yeah.
We had some, we don't charge you, put a 0.
Yeah.
For example, I know the recommended practice that we set is 5.
Yeah.
That's a default. We can add that.
If,
no problem.
if there's a free transfer involved, use the free transfer demurrage type, which is ZZZ. Yeah, that's all there as well. So the calculation is done on the type of transfer that's done. Default will be there,
Yeah.
and all of those.
For the line is just 5. Freight forwarder, we have an option to change it.
Correct.
What is the standard set for freight forwarders?
Well, there's no
Hang on a second. I think we need to clarify something. When we're talking about demurrage, we are only talking about interlining.
Yep.
Yeah.
Freight forwarders, there's no doors. It's only
Days.
You go back to the freight
Yeah,
forwarders.
I can do that. Let me go back.
It doesn't show any dollar amounts. It only shows days.
Yeah.
We don't talk dollars. Because that
Yeah.
will
That's exactly
get
right.
us into trouble.
But you can just talk dollars to them, that's no issue. And later we could potentially add it, but for an airline, that if you have the agreement with the freight forwarder, but right now we've been told keep to days.
Well, technically, even with the airlines, there's no legal obligation that you have to pay it. That's real life.
And that's why I don't have a cash and carry system in here.
We know it's to show
Yeah.
organization. It's up to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
I like all the capability that you've talked about today, especially in terms of tracking consumables. Earlier on, you mentioned the possibility of an airline providing you with their inventory list of all the ULDs that you can upload. Could you do the same with net numbers, for example?
Yes.
All that's for that.
If you as an industry can change the way you operate, and I'm going to forget about nets for a moment. What's the most expensive extra item that goes on a pallet? Fire blanket. Now, there's guys downstairs selling them with GPS trackers already in them. Nearly every other person down there is selling them with unique ID numbers. If you provide me a list of trackable items, and today you give me two types of trackable items, pallets and containers. If you give me other trackable items, I add them as trackable inventory. Now, that means that you're going to have to tell me what ID number is going out on everything. I can handle that. The problem that we're in at the moment is that we need a working party that needs to be set up by these gentlemen and the industry to seriously have a good look at what is UCR plus. What can I send and what can I track and trace, and how do I do it? How do I try and set up a new standard? And it's really, really simple. That says it's this type and it's this, and basically we've said these are the asset types that we're able to track and trace. And I can add a new asset type and I can add a new asset list. As long as I have unique identifiers, I can track them and add them. But I need a way within the UCR to represent them. And there's some small things that need to happen, but they're quite large mountains. Because of the legacy systems that we're talking about that drive most airlines.
I mean, just to take a policy point of view, right at the very outset, we decided we could not do anything that cut across RP 1650 before the standard UCR. Because if we did that, well, it would all go up in the air. So the only thing we did slightly was we added bar covers. But yeah, what Owen is saying, I agree with. There's lots of opportunities within this system to add a number of other functions. And you're quite right when you talk about nets and straps and all this stuff. It's all there. It's just a matter of the resources to do it.
Yeah.
Partly financial resources, partly human resources, partly time resources. But in theory, it can be done. In theory, it can be done. But what it does do, just to come back to the system, and it's, again, we haven't focused it, we haven't given it priority, is it will keep a running total. Maybe Darren could open that screen, where basically, let's say the airline has transferred 10 pallets and 10 nets to a forwarder. And then next week, the forwarder returns 5 pallets, each with a net. So he's still in the hole for 5 pallets and 5 nets. But then he gets some more pallets, and so you can see the numbers are going up and down like this. So the system keeps a running tally of the number of nets. Okay? But then the question is, when do you ever shut off that running total? At the end of each month? At the end of each quarter? At the end of each year? Because let's say at that point in time, the forwarder now owes 50 nets, but he's only got 30 pallets. Okay, now he's in a hole for 20 nets. But what we haven't managed to work out yet is whether he will do that every month, every quarter, every 6 months, whatever. And this is the sort of thing we need to have the opportunity to have a discussion.
Yeah, so Tawanda, you can see up here 5 and 1, 9 and 2, 3 and 6, 20 and 12. The number of non-trackable items, the extra equipment that have been passed between these two parties over the period of time. We have developed a settlement prototype, which would allow you for you to look from your point of view of what do you owe me, what do I owe you, and for me to be looking at it from the reverse saying what do you owe me. Now, problem with some of that, and this is why I spend a bit of time downstairs with the OEMs and learning a bit more about this. All your bloody straps have all got your airline name on it. And all my straps have my airline name on it. Guess what I want back? Not your straps, and not hers, and not his. And I definitely don't want his nets. But what am I hearing? Oh, my pallet came back, but it had his net sitting on it. What have I got to do? I've got to separate it. I go and give him back his net, and he goes, "Where the hell's my pallet?" I go, "Well, I don't know. I got his net from somewhere else. At least he got his asset back." But I'm stuffed because I don't have my net. I'm down on my asset, and eventually my CFO goes, "What do you mean you're having to buy again?" So one of the things we're trying to do here is, get people to act responsibly, change the way people operate, try and get some better business practices within the industry. That would be a first part, so that we can actually do this in a controlled manner. But we have started thinking about it, and we're challenging. We're trying to push and challenge. Now, if that means that you're a brand new organisation and you know how to set up that relationship in your IT systems, great. I can handle what you want, because to me, it's UCR plus. But I can also go back to lowest common denominator and handle UCR. What I would really like people to be thinking about is UCR plus. If they still have to play with luck and muck, I also want you to tell me about, I'll have an expanded version of luck and muck, and I'm calling them luck plus and muck plus, so that you can tell me about fire covers and the extra equipment. If you're able to tell me about traceability of fire covers and nets and things like that, I'm hoping to be able to offer that to you as well. Because I don't want to be having an indefinite number of untracked items out there, and especially items that have real value. And value is not just financial value, it's about being able to have full sets to be able to send on an aircraft.
And what I would say, I know that Darren's demonstrated the RFID reading.
No.
But, we played with having...
Where is it? Like that?
I showed you today the RFID tag. Now, we're looking at putting an RFID tag on a pallet. But once you start to encourage the industry to look at everything with RFID, you can very easily put an RFID antenna, which costs nothing, into a net of a TSO tag, into a strap on the TSO tag. You can beat that. You can know if it's an airline. It can be used for tracing. But this is phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4. You know how hard it is to change this industry. Yeah. So we need to let it. But we're going in the right direction, and I think the point is, this system is designed with data capture in mind, non-eyeball data capture. So, current generation data capture.
So, being able to capture RFID reader, if I hadn't broken my own application, I'd be able to scan from here. It'll pick up the 2 tags that are down there, tell me what they are, put them into a transaction if I want them in a transaction. As somebody said to me, to Darren the other day, if I had three stacks of them against my back wall, being able to simply go bang, 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 and whack that and say that's my inventory management. Airline 1, Airline 2, Airline 3, Airline 4 are looking at what's in that ground handler's inventory and going, hey, I need to shift that from A to B. I need that here, I need that there. But today, where is anything? As somebody said, part of the Fakawi tribe. It's all lost. It's all there, but it's lost in plain sight. If we can get past that and start using some of the readily available technologies, and I'm not saying it's ours, I'm saying enable us to incorporate some of those technologies in to make data visible. And that just helps the whole industry. It doesn't just help you as a single organisation, it helps the whole industry.
All right.
I think we're probably just about at the end of our time. I think we should probably let everybody take a break. But what I would say is that Darren and Owen are available anytime tomorrow. Just go and grab them, and you can spend as long as you like getting more information on the system. Am I right to say that you've broken that reader and you haven't been able to demonstrate the RF?
No, I broke my app, so the reader can't work.
Oh, okay, I've got my reader upstairs. So tomorrow.
No, I broke the mobile app, and the reader won't talk to us.
So the reader can talk to the RFID, but into the app directly. We had it working, he broke it.
My apologies around that, but when I did the last release of the mobile app, I obviously didn't test well enough at the time. So that's another part for all of this, is when you've got so many different devices and so many things, breaking things is easy.
Yeah. If anybody wants a demonstration of the app, we can do that quite quickly. Unfortunately, we just had issues getting it projected, but if you need it, if you want to see a quick app demonstration of doing a transfer, one of the other features it has, it can also search an ID. So if I scan an ID, it'll tell me who's the owner of it, what's the airline associated with it, and if it's been interlined. And it'll also tell you the manager associated with it. So we have that built into here. So if it was interest, happy to show you how that works.
And if you've got any other questions around what are we doing in the future, where are we going with it, please come find me, come see Darren. Bring us your use case. Let's document it up. We submit all the use cases back to Bob and to ULD Care. They're going to have a look at it, and they prioritise what we start building into the function. This is controlled by you guys. This isn't about me wanting to do certain things. I do them anyway. That's where you get some of the sexy stuff. But we're looking at the business case here of what do you guys need to run your businesses better? And how can I give you better visibility so you can run your businesses better? And with that, I'm going to say good night, because I'm obviously in between you and a glass of wine. So go enjoy yourself, and we'll see you back in here 9:30, I believe, Bob.
Yes, 9:30. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I hope you found that useful. I'm going to come over and say hello.
I'm not that happy. I'm not that happy with this attendance. This is pretty poor. I think that
Kind of